The night was quiet inside the billionaire's mansion. Expensive lights glowed softly on the walls, and the big hall was filled with silence. On the leather sofa, the billionaire lay back with his eyes closed. To anyone watching, it looked like he was asleep. His breathing was calm, his face relaxed, and his hand hung loosely over the side of the sofa. But the truth was different. He was not really sleeping. The billionaire had built his empire with sharp eyes and a suspicious mind. Over the years, many people had pretended to care for him, but in the end, they only wanted his money. Even close friends had betrayed him. That was why he had stopped trusting almost everyone. Now, as he lay pretending to sleep, he was not resting. He was testing. On the table beside him lay his open wallet. Inside, bundles of cash and shiny credit cards were clearly visible. Anyone who entered the room could see it. It was not placed there by accident. The billionaire had done this on purpose. He wanted to see what the maid's daughter would do when she came in. The girl was young, only in her late teens. Her clothes were simple, her shoes worn out, but her eyes always carried a soft glow of innocence. Her mother had worked in the mansion for years, and when times became too hard, the girl also started helping. She cleaned, arranged books, carried water, and did little tasks without ever complaining. That night, she slowly opened the door. Her steps were quiet as she entered the room, holding a small cleaning cloth in her hand. She thought the billionaire was asleep, so she moved gently, careful not to make noise. She looked at him for a moment. He seemed tired, and a little pale under the dim light. She started dusting the shelves, then picked up a cushion that had fallen to the floor. Every move she made was quiet, almost like she was protecting his rest. But then her eyes caught something, the wallet. It was open, filled with more money than she had ever seen in her life. For a moment, her hand froze. The billionaire's heart beat faster as he watched secretly from behind his half-closed eyes. This was the moment. Would she take the money? Would she slip a note into her pocket, thinking no one would notice? He had seen adults, even relatives, do exactly that when they thought he wasn't looking. The girl's lips pressed together. She walked closer to the table and looked at the wallet. Her fingers trembled slightly. Hunger, poverty, and struggle, he knew these things followed her family every day. One small note from that wallet could buy her food for weeks. But what would she do? She reached out her hand slowly. The billionaire held his breath, his mind racing. Then, something unexpected happened. She didn't take the money. Instead, she carefully picked up the wallet with both hands. She looked at the billionaire, still lying with his eyes closed. A small smile touched her lips, soft and almost sad. Gently, she placed the wallet closer to his side, where it would be safe. Then, without thinking much, she reached for a blanket folded on the nearby chair. With quiet steps, she came close and spread it over him. "You must be cold," she whispered softly, almost like a prayer, thinking he couldn't hear. The billionaire's chest tightened. He had expected greed, maybe curiosity, but not this. He could feel the warmth of the blanket she placed over him, and it felt different from anything money had ever given him. The girl stepped back, her eyes resting on him for a moment longer. Then she turned away and continued with her cleaning. She moved gently, humming a small tune under her breath, a tune full of calmness. Inside, the billionaire was shaken. Years of betrayal had built a wall around his heart, but one simple act of kindness from this poor girl was cracking it. He didn't move, didn't open his eyes, but his thoughts kept racing. Why did she not take anything? Why did she cover me instead? As she left the room quietly, closing the door behind her, the billionaire let out a slow breath. For the first time in a long while, his eyes stung with a strange feeling he had almost forgotten: trust. But deep inside, another thought formed. One night was not enough. One act could be chance. He wanted to know if her heart was truly pure. And so, in the darkness of his mansion, the billionaire made a silent decision. This was only the beginning. The next morning, the billionaire sat alone in his study. The tall windows let in golden sunlight, but his eyes were fixed on the laptop in front of him. His fingers tapped the keys as he opened a private folder. Hidden cameras were placed all around his mansion, something no one knew about. He had installed them long ago, after too many betrayals. Now, he searched for the footage from last night. His heart was calm on the outside, but inside, a storm of curiosity moved through him. He wanted to see every small detail again. The video started playing. There he was, lying on the sofa, pretending to sleep. And there she was, the maid's daughter, entering quietly with her soft steps. He watched every second, his eyes unblinking. He saw her notice the wallet. He saw her hand pause in midair. His chest tightened as if he was reliving the moment again. He remembered how he had been certain she would slip the money into her pocket. But the footage showed the truth. She had lifted the wallet only to place it safely beside him. Then she had pulled the blanket over him, whispering words that even the microphone caught faintly. "You must be cold." The billionaire paused the video. He leaned back in his chair and closed his eyes for a moment. Those words echoed in his ears. No one had cared for him in such a small, genuine way for years. People gave him gifts, spoke sweet words, but always with a hidden purpose. Yet this poor girl, who had nothing, had shown care without expecting anything in return. For a long time, he sat there in silence, staring at the paused frame of her gentle face on the screen. Memories rose in his mind like shadows from the past. He remembered business partners who stole from him, relatives who smiled at his table but cursed him behind his back, friends who left when he had refused to give them money. Every betrayal had made his heart harder, colder. He had come to believe that kindness did not exist anymore, that honesty was a mask people wore only until they got what they wanted. But the girl had broken that belief in one single night. Still, a small voice inside him whispered doubt. What if it was chance? What if she acted like that only because she thought someone might wake up? He shook his head. One test was not enough. He needed to be sure. The billionaire's sharp mind began planning again. This time, he wanted the test to be harder, something no one could resist. He thought of his expensive jewelry collection. Gold chains, diamond rings, necklaces worth more than her entire family could earn in a lifetime. If she could resist that, then her honesty was not an accident, it was real. But before setting the test, he wanted to see her face once more. He left his study and walked to the servants' quarters. From a distance, he saw her sitting on a small wooden stool outside the kitchen. She was peeling vegetables, her hair tied back in a simple braid. Her clothes were old, but she looked neat and clean. She hummed softly while she worked, lost in her own world. The billionaire stopped and watched her without being noticed. The sun touched her face, and for a moment, she looked more like a girl who belonged to a world of innocence, not one struggling in poverty. Her mother came out carrying a basket of laundry. "Child, eat something first," the maid said kindly. But the girl shook her head with a smile. "I will eat later. Work first." The billionaire's chest tightened again. That same small glow of kindness was there in everything she did. No greed, no demands, only simplicity. Later, when he returned to his grand bedroom, he placed one of his most valuable diamond necklaces on the table beside his bed. He positioned it carefully so it would catch the light and shine brightly. Then he lay down, pretending to fall asleep once again. As he closed his eyes, waiting for her to arrive, he thought about the night before. A strange warmth filled his chest. It had been years since he felt anything like it. But tonight, he told himself, he would know for certain. Would her innocence survive the sparkle of diamonds? The night air in the mansion felt heavy with silence. The billionaire lay on his wide bed, pretending once again to sleep. But this time, something sparkled near him. On the bedside table, under the soft glow of the lamp, lay a diamond necklace worth more than a lifetime of wages for a poor family. He had placed it there carefully. Its silver chain shone, and the diamonds caught the light like little stars. It was no ordinary test. Money was one thing, cash could be ignored. But jewelry, glowing with beauty and power, had tempted even the most loyal hearts. The billionaire's breathing was slow and steady, but inside, his thoughts raced. He wanted to see her reaction. Would the maid's daughter pass this test too? The door creaked open after some time. The girl entered, holding a small jug of water. She walked softly, not wishing to disturb him. Her steps were careful, her face calm. She placed the jug on the tray near the bed, then adjusted the curtains so that the light wouldn't be too bright. And then, her eyes caught it. The necklace. She froze for a moment. Her breath seemed to pause. Never before had she been so close to such wealth. The diamonds glittered as if calling to her, promising a life free of struggle, free of hunger, free of old shoes and patched clothes. The billionaire, hidden behind his closed eyes, felt his heart pounding. He was watching every second with his ears, every silence with his mind. He waited to hear the soft sound of the necklace being touched, of temptation winning. The girl slowly stepped closer to the table. Her hand lifted just a little, as if her body moved on its own. She looked at the necklace, her eyes wide. Anyone else would have taken it. Anyone else would have thought of selling it, of changing their life forever. But then, something shifted in her face. She pulled her hand back and whispered softly to herself, her voice breaking the silence. People who steal lose themselves. I will never do it. The billionaire's heart skipped a beat. Those words struck him harder than any betrayal he had ever suffered. Her voice was quiet, but full of strength. She wasn't just avoiding temptation, she was choosing her own values over survival. Instead of touching the necklace, she carefully moved the jug of water closer to the table and made sure it wouldn't spill. Then she looked at him, lying still under the blanket. For a moment, her expression softened. You are so rich, sir, she whispered again, almost sadly. But I hope one day you find peace too. The billionaire's throat tightened. He had expected her to either steal or ignore. But this was something he had never imagined. She was worried for him, a man who already had everything. She turned away and quietly walked toward the door. Her steps were soft, her head bowed, as if carrying her own invisible weight of poverty. Yet she carried it with dignity, with strength. The billionaire opened his eyes the moment the door clicked shut. His chest rose and fell as he let out a deep breath he didn't know he was holding. The necklace still lay untouched beside him, shining as proof of her honesty. He sat up slowly, his hands pressing against his knees. His mind was no longer calm, it was storming with emotions. He remembered again the lies, the betrayals, the greed of people he had once trusted. He remembered giving gifts only to be abandoned later. He remembered being treated like nothing more than a walking bag of money. And now here was this girl, with no wealth, no comfort, no future promised, yet she carried an honesty that was worth more than diamonds. For the first time in years, the billionaire felt something break inside him. A crack in the hard shell around his heart. But still, one thought haunted him. Could it be real? Could someone so pure still exist in this world? He needed to be certain. 2 tests had been passed. But he would not stop here. The next test would not be about money or jewelry. It would be about something deeper. Something stronger. He leaned back on the bed, staring at the necklace one last time. Then he whispered to himself. If she can resist hunger, then I will know the truth. And with that, he began planning his next test. The billionaire had tested her with money. He had tested her with diamonds. Both times, the maid's daughter had walked away with clean hands and a pure heart. But deep inside, his doubt still whispered. What if honesty came easily because she did not truly feel the weight of temptation? What if the struggle of hunger was placed in front of her? And so, he planned the next test. This time, he left something far simpler but far harder to resist. Late in the evening, when the girl usually came by to clean and arrange his room, he placed a tray of food on the table beside his chair. Not just any food. It was freshly cooked, rich with aroma, the kind of meal that would make anyone's mouth water. There was bread warm from the oven, a plate of roasted chicken, and a small bowl of sweet fruit. The smell filled the room, spreading through the air. The billionaire had heard from his staff that sometimes the maid's daughter skipped meals so her mother could eat instead. He had noticed her thin frame, her quiet endurance, the way she never complained even when her stomach must have been empty. Tonight, he wanted to see what hunger would make her do. He sat back on the sofa, closed his eyes, and pretended once more to sleep. The food was left within her reach, shining under the soft lights of the room. Minutes passed before the door opened. The girl stepped in, carrying a small duster in her hand. She looked tired, her steps slow, but her face was calm as always. She began tidying the shelves, arranging a few scattered papers, and moving quietly so she wouldn't disturb the man who appeared to be resting. But soon, her nose caught the smell. Her head lifted slightly. Her eyes turned to the tray. The food was right there. Steam still rose from it. The billionaire kept his breathing steady, though inside, his heart beat faster. He waited. Hunger was stronger than greed. Hunger could break even the strongest will. The girl walked closer. Her lips parted as if she wanted to breathe in the scent deeper. Her eyes rested on the bread. Her hand lifted just a little. The billionaire's chest tightened. This is it, he thought. This is where she will fail. But then, she lowered her hand. She shook her head. Her voice was soft, almost like she was reminding herself. This must be for Sir. I will not take it. Her stomach growled faintly, a sound even the billionaire could hear from where he lay. For a moment, she placed her hand over her belly as if to silence it. Then she gave a small, sad smile. I can wait. Mother is waiting for me, she whispered. The billionaire felt his throat burn. He had lived his life with everything on his table, more food than he could ever eat. Yet this girl, who had nothing, was refusing even a single bite. Not because she didn't need it, but because she respected what wasn't hers. She moved the tray slightly, adjusting it closer to him, making sure it wouldn't fall. Then, instead of touching the food, she picked up the blanket and placed it gently over his shoulders again, just as she had done before. You must keep your strength, sir, she said softly. People like you work very hard. The billionaire's heart ached. He wanted to open his eyes right then, to tell her the truth, to ask her why she was so different from the world he knew. But he stopped himself. He had to be sure. The girl turned away, her steps quiet as she left the room. The door closed softly behind her. The billionaire finally opened his eyes. His gaze fell on the untouched tray of food, still warm, still waiting. For a long time, he stared at it. His chest rose and fell as he let out a deep breath. He had tested her with wealth, with diamonds, with hunger. And every time, she had chosen honesty, respect, and kindness over desire. His eyes burned with unshed tears, but he quickly wiped them away. A billionaire crying alone in his own mansion, it felt almost strange to him. But his heart was no longer cold. And yet, one final doubt remained. He wanted to see not just honesty, not just respect, but compassion. Could she care for someone beyond herself and her mother? Could her kindness reach even him? He leaned back against the sofa, whispering to himself in the empty room. One last test. The hardest one yet. And with that, he began preparing for the moment that would reveal the girl's true heart once and for all. The billionaire had seen enough to know the maid's daughter was different. She had refused money. She had resisted diamonds. She had turned away from food, even when her hunger was clear. But one question still lived inside his heart. Could she care for someone who could give her nothing in return? Could her kindness reach a man who had only tested her again and again? That night, he prepared the last test. He told the staff not to enter his room. He closed the lights, leaving only a small lamp burning beside his bed. Then he lay down under the covers, letting out weak, painful groans. His hand rested on his chest, his breathing heavy. He would pretend to be sick, weak, and helpless. If she came, what would she do? Would she ignore him? Would she call her mother? Or would she reveal her true heart? The minutes felt long. His body stayed still, but inside, his mind was restless. For a man who had conquered empires of business, this simple act of waiting felt harder than any deal he had ever made. Finally, the door opened. The girl stepped in, holding a small tray with water. She froze the moment she saw him. His body lay twisted under the blanket, his face pale, his groans filling the room. "Sir," she whispered, her voice trembling. There was no answer. He only groaned softly, pressing his chest as if in pain. The tray shook in her hands. She rushed forward, placing the water quickly on the table. Then she leaned close, panic rising in her young face. "Sir, are you all right? Should I call someone? Mother? The doctor?" Her hands fluttered helplessly for a moment. She looked around, her eyes wide. Then, without waiting, she ran to fetch a small cloth from the bathroom. She dipped it in water and returned quickly, pressing it gently against his forehead. "It's all right, don't worry. I'll help you," she whispered, though her own voice shook with fear. The billionaire, still pretending, felt every touch. Her hand was small, but steady. She adjusted the blanket around him, sat by his side, and began fanning him with the edge of her scarf. Minutes passed. She stayed. She didn't leave to find her mother, she didn't complain. She simply did what she could, tears welling in her eyes. "Please be all right," she whispered. "You are alone, but I will not leave you like this." Those words pierced through the billionaire's chest like nothing ever had. He had always been surrounded by people, yet he had always felt alone. And now, this poor girl, someone who owed him nothing, was sitting by his side, praying softly for him. His heart trembled. He could not continue the act anymore. Slowly, he opened his eyes. His voice was low, but steady. "I am not sick." The girl froze. She pulled back the cloth, staring at him with wide eyes. Confusion and fear mixed in her face. What do you mean?" she whispered. The billionaire slowly sat up, his eyes never leaving hers. For a long moment, silence filled the room, heavy and deep. Then he spoke the truth. "I was testing you." Her lips parted, shock written all over her face. She stood up quickly, as if she had done something wrong. Her hands trembled. "Testing me? Why?" The billionaire's gaze softened. His voice shook with emotion as he explained. "Because I no longer trust people. Too many have betrayed me. Too many have used me for my money. I thought the world had no honesty left. So I tested you, again and again." The girl's eyes filled with tears. She lowered her head, confused, ashamed, not knowing what to say. But the billionaire leaned forward. His eyes glistened as he continued. "And every time, you proved me wrong. You showed me honesty when you could have stolen. You showed me self-respect when you could have taken what was not yours. You showed me kindness when I had given you nothing." His voice broke. For the first time in many years, his heart felt heavy, not with anger, but with gratitude. The girl wiped her eyes nervously. I only did what was right," she whispered. The billionaire shook his head. "No. You did what most people cannot. You gave me hope again." And then, with a trembling hand, he reached forward and held hers. "You are not just a maid's daughter to me anymore. You are proof that goodness still exists in this world." Tears rolled down her cheeks as she stared at him, speechless. The billionaire knew the truth now. This girl's heart was pure. And in that moment, he also knew what he had to do next. This test was over. But her life was about to change forever. The room was heavy with silence after the billionaire's words. The maid's daughter stood frozen, her hands trembling in his. She had thought she was only helping a sick man. She had not known she was being tested again and again, her every action watched. Her lips parted, but no words came out. She lowered her eyes, her face burning with confusion. "I am sorry if I did something wrong," she whispered at last. The billionaire shook his head. His voice, for once, was soft, gentle, almost like a father's. "No, child. You did everything right. More than right. You did what even the richest fail to do. You chose honesty, kindness, and respect every single time." Tears welled in his eyes as he spoke. For years, he had lived surrounded by walls, unable to trust anyone. And yet this poor girl, with nothing but a pure heart, had broken through those walls. She blinked at him, confused. But, why? Why would you test me? The billionaire sighed deeply, his voice carrying the weight of old scars. Because I have been betrayed too many times. Friends, family, partners, people I trusted most. They all saw me as money, not as a man. I thought goodness no longer existed. But then you came, and I had to know if you were different. The girl's throat tightened. She remembered the wallet, the diamonds, the food. She remembered every small moment. Realization struck her, he had been awake each time. Watching. Judging. A tear slid down her cheek. I only did what my mother taught me. She said even if we have nothing, we must never take what is not ours. And if someone is in pain, we must help them, no matter who they are. The billionaire's chest swelled. For the first time in years, he felt something he thought was lost, hope. He reached into the drawer beside his bed and pulled out a thick envelope. He held it toward her. This is for you, he said. She hesitated, shaking her head quickly. No, sir. I cannot take money. Please, I don't want anything. But the billionaire smiled faintly. This is not charity. This is a reward. Inside are documents for your education. I will pay for your school, your college, your future. You will never have to choose between hunger and honesty again. The girl gasped, her hand flying to her mouth. Tears streamed down her face. For a moment, she couldn't move. Couldn't believe. He continued, his voice heavy with emotion. You are like the daughter I never had. And from this day forward, I will not see you as just my maid's child. You will have a place in this house, in my family, in my life. The door creaked softly then. Her mother, the maid, stood there in shock. She had heard enough to understand. Her eyes widened, her hand covering her lips. Sir, she whispered, trembling. You don't have to. But the billionaire raised his hand gently. I must. You gave me loyalty all these years. And your daughter has given me something no one else ever could. She reminded me that true wealth is not in banks or jewels, it is in the honesty of a pure heart. The maid began to cry quietly, her shoulders shaking. She had never imagined such a moment. The billionaire rose from his bed slowly. He walked to the girl and placed a hand on her head, almost like a blessing. His voice broke as he said, You covered me with a blanket when I needed nothing. Now, I will cover your life with everything I have. The girl sobbed, falling to her knees. She had never dreamed that her small acts of kindness would change her fate forever. For a long while, the three stood together in that room, rich man, poor maid, and her daughter, bound not by money, but by something deeper, trust. The billionaire knew his life would never be the same again. His mansion, once filled with silence and suspicion, now carried warmth. And for the first time in decades, he smiled, not the smile of a businessman, but of a man who had found family. The shocking truth was no longer hidden. It wasn't the billionaire who had tested the girl. It was life itself. And she had passed with honor.